the red flag flying here.
Well, let me talk a bit about the weather. You must admit it's not very clever. Don't get me wrong, it's not an anti-British song. Well, there is nowhere I would rather be wrong. I'm gonna start my own nation and do my own thing, and I will be king. I'm gonna start my own nation, run myself for preservation. I'm gonna start my own nation, run myself for preservation. There are just a few things that I would like to say about the UK and how I think it has gone astray. Don't get me wrong, it ain't all bad. I love the crazy fads, like England always buggering up, but you know we're gonna win the World Cup. I'm gonna start my own nation, run myself for preservation. I'm gonna start my own nation, run myself for preservation.
Keep the red flag flying here.
John, you're muted.
Well, that's good because I've come in at the wrong time now 3 times. So thank goodness I haven't spoiled anything. Welcome everybody to this edition of Political Unmuted. I think it's the 11th of August, Tuesday the 11th of August. I normally welcome people at this point. I'm going to welcome myself. I'm a bit under the weather. It's the second. I've got the second spike hay fever season. I'm feeling a bit miserable. But apart from that, I'm ready to go, and welcome to the team as always. This team turns up Tuesday after Tuesday. They're so talented and knowledgeable and put up with me, and they are just fantastic. The listeners adore you. So, hiya, Paul.
Hello.
Hiya, Stuart.
Hello.
He's the quiet and strong chap. Hiya, Sam.
Hello.
Hiya, Laura.
Hello.
Anything to report, Laura?
No.
No? All right.
Yeah, we definitely haven't had a private chat about my strop today. I promise I'll be on best behaviour.
Before we go any further, I'm just going to explain to listeners about our chill out zone at the end. It runs the hour. We finish very much sort of at 10 o'clock as far as possible as we can on the dot. But then what we do is we don't turn off, we hang around, and that's when we go through the comments. I can never get them. Sam, we rely on you always to sort of moderate the comments, and we comment on the comments. So please make your comments on the Socialist Think Tank comment stream. But also, if you want to join us for that chill out zone, if you just put something in the comments that you'd like to join us, Paul will send you the link, and you're welcome to come and chill out with us. That lasts about half an hour, and then we sort of disperse in a disorderly manner, usually, to tell you the truth.
Can I just highlight that, can that be on the main Socialist Think Tank one, so they're all in the same place, because we do drop these into a number of different groups, but if you comment in the group that you're in, we won't see it.
Very, very wise, yes. So you need to go on to the Socialist Think Think Tank
Think book.
page where this is running live. I know this because my wife's watching it. And make your comments there. Polite comments only, please, else you'll disappear quickly. Right, okay, and now, Paul, you'll have to put down your drink because we come to... Now, listen, you may not know, but what happens is before the show, there's a general chatter on a group, a Facebook group that we have just for the people who are the team, the judges, and talking about things like, I'm going to mention this. Is anybody else going to mention this? Because I'm going to mention it. And so we don't tread on each other's toes. But sort of, I have it on good authority that both Sam and Laura are full of hell today. I'm most scared of Sam, Laura.
Oh, really?
She's so angry today, she's had to go and take a shower to try and calm down. So there's no question who I'm coming to first. Sam, you are so important to us and we love you so much. As well as being terrified of you. Moment of the week.
So I am going to focus on a positive one. I think it's just the heat today, isn't it, Laura? And when you've got small kids and they're all over you all the time, yeah. I literally had to ask my 4-year-old to stop touching me today. I was like, please stop touching me. But yes, my moment of the week is we've had a very good week full of birthdays and anniversaries this week. So it's really reminded me of what is important, even though the kids do drive me insane. It is lovely that they continue. And my oldest child turned 9 years old, and he's growing up and he's lovely. He's so adorable. He's got his own computer now, so he's very.
Now I saw on Facebook that you were explaining his computer to him, and he wanted nothing to do with it at first. Has he fallen in love with it yet?
Yeah. So it was just a bit confused because it was a surprise. And to backtrack a few steps for people who don't know me and don't know my family, my boys are autistic, and not Alex, Stevie, my oldest child. Things like presents, he's had to really be taught how to receive a present, and that if somebody gives you something that's wrapped up, you should open it. And so basically he was just really confused about the computer because it was a surprise.
Surprises are not good for autistic people because they like to pre-plan in advance how they're going to react in the situation. And surprise is really bad. And the other thing that many Asperger's children can't get is choice. So they're really bad. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah, so we opened it, and I just think he didn't know what to do with it because it was too much information all at once. So he kind of walked away, and he had other things, obviously games and that, to play with for his birthday. But he's been all over it today, and I showed him the CBeebies website where he can play some games, and he was like, "This is amazing."
Well, absolutely great. Thank you very much. And sort of family, absolutely crucial at this point. Because we cut so many other ties. Laura, I'm scared of you too.
Thank you.
I won't ask you what you got cross about, but you can share with us if you want. What's your moment of the week?
Well, I think following that, I'm going to have to do something positive, Anna. I did consider the ludicrousness that was Donald Trump saying that the Spanish flu of 1918 probably ended World War II in 1945. I mean, that is some flu to go on that long. Or the Archbishop of Canterbury saying about the alleged Prince Andrew scandal, that asking royals to be superhuman is unrealistic. I can go on a long rant about that one if you'd like me to, but I thought, no, we'll leave that there. We'll leave that there. Or that I became insanely obsessed with the musical Hamilton this week, that I can't stop watching now. But
now, Catherine Ryan is really dismissive of that. She really has it in for Hamilton because of what he does. Have you seen the Catherine Ryan show where she really lays into Hamilton? I think
it's the loaded this song.
And he's there singing. Sort of his slave girl, who was only 16 at the time, walks in. His wife's gone away, and he starts singing, "What is this? I must resist. What is this temptation?" And sort of she's saying, this is rape. What are you playing at? There's no question here. There's no debating this, for goodness sake. Sort of an awful man. And sort of,
we can have a full show. We can have a full show on the intricacies of Hamilton and why it's equally good and bad. But instead, what I'm going to do is just send some love to Chris Varney, one of our Central Campaigns Vice Chair Campaigns Officer, who is raising money for Refuge at the minute, doing a 67-mile walk over August to raise money for women who need to attend the Refuge charity and get money and help and support because they are victims of domestic abuse and violence. It is a wonderful charity and she's just doing amazing, especially because and she'd probably hate me saying this actually, but I don't think she finds it the easiest to just walk and walk and walk and walk. And for that reason, it's just such a positive story because she's incredible and she does everything she can to support other people. And this one's a big one, and we'll definitely be sending her some money for her.
Now, my old Vicky used to say that if you love the Lord, at Christmas, you should give a present to God equal to the present you give to the person you love most. And so, however much you spend on your wife, in my case, you ought to give to something good, a charity. And so I did that for years and years and years, and I used to support the Darlington Women's Refuge, and that fallen off that. And so I must start doing that again. It's not good enough.
Well, you'll probably find that a lot of them have been closed down, John. You'll have to try and find one. Well, that's the problem.
Now you've told me that Chris Farty's doing it, I'll just give her the money. That's that.
Yeah. Okay.
So brilliant moment of the week. Okay, lads, short and sharp. The girls have had their say. And Paul, go first, please.
I'm going to do a really, really quick one. I went for a COVID antibodies test to see if I can give plasma to help people recover from COVID this week. So I await my test results so I can go and sit there for 90 minutes and get my blood taken out, and then they'll put the red blood cells back in and give the plasma to someone. Hopefully I've got COVID antibodies that could help save someone's life, but if not, I am considering changing my regular blood donation to a platelet donation. Because I went up there, it's kind of scary in a way, like the idea of being hooked up to the machine and it going out and coming back in, but you know, it's a good thing to do. So that's my moment of the week.
Two things. First of all, listeners, Paul is a big giver of blood. An absolutely wonderful and important thing, sort of respect, Paul. Absolutely brilliant. But the other thing is my son gives blood as well, and they're much more interested in his platelets than they are in his blood, to be quite frank with you.
It's a bit of a more intense thing, and you can do it more regularly, but it's a good thing to be able to do. But I'm not saying it to tell people that, you know, it's something worthy of praise. It's just the idea. It's not that bad giving blood. It really isn't. If I can do it, anyone can do it. So it's really not bad. And please, like, have a look out to see if you're, like, you find out what your blood type is, and you find out if you're a red donor and stuff. And it's good to be able to do something. It doesn't take that long. You get a club biscuit at the end. Nice.
You know, Stuart, moment of the week.
My wife Ashley, she took me up to Newcastle for my birthday, and while I was up there, the nurses were having a bit of a rally in a march, considering how they got left out of the pay deal that was offered to pretty much everyone else.
Did you join in, or did you just applaud them from the sidelines?
From the sidelines. From the sidelines.
Very good. And happy birthday to you. How many is this, Stuart? Are we allowed to ask?
I'm 35.
Ooh.
Just a pup.
Wise behind your ears. Wise behind your ears. Slight gasp of jealousy across the. Okay,
David in the comments.
And now it's time for.
Now it's time for the big story.
I wasn't going to say this, but Paul's making me. Right at the beginning of the pandemic, the professor, the Durham University professor, Simone Abrams, she wrote an article in the DEI, the Durham Energy Institute, which is part of Durham University, in their academic journal, which is called Perspectives. She wrote a thing saying, isn't COVID horrible, but have you noticed how much cleaner the air is, how we're learning to do without air transport, how the roads are so much quieter. There's so much positive that I'm very hopeful, said Simone, that we're going to come out of this with a much better world. Now, I'm exactly the opposite. I think that we're going to come out of it with a much worse world. And so I wrote an article, and I just put it on my own Facebook page, just sort of saying, and I did a little thing in the Newton News, sort of saying, I'm very worried about COVID. I think we're going to come out in a much worse world, because sort of people will just say, I can't be bothered with all this climate change. I'm struggling to survive here. I want to get back to normal. And and everything that we've done will just get put on the side. Now, what happened was that the DEI saw that article and said, can we publish it in the Perspectives magazine? So I published that. And out of that came another article, which was the responses of a whole load of learned people who responded to our one for and one again, and sort of 20 big ideas of people coming on and saying, this is where I want to go. Now, they were focused on the green revolution, keeping climate change at the forefront. But then that overlapped with something that Paul was saying, is when he was criticizing the government, and he's saying, where are the big ideas for how we come out of this? Where are the big ideas for our exit strategy for COVID? I think Rishi Sunak did quite well with some big ideas with how we cope with it when it was there. But what are the big ideas for coming out? And as with always with this government, there's very little planning, and there's all sorts of fair words and fine promises. So what I chose for the big, and it's my choice this week for the big issue is the big story is, what are your big ideas? Now, the first thing is, please, listener, put your big idea in the comments on the Socialist Think Tank. We'd love to have a look and see what they are in the chill out zone after the show, after 10 o'clock. And sort of, you don't need to explain it. Just say my big idea is, and then we'll be able to say, wow, that's a brilliant idea. My big idea, as always, has been those plastic bottles. Why don't they have volume markers up the side, so you don't have to pour it into a measuring jug to measure milk into your cooking? Why don't they have them just up the size of the milk bottle, and then you could just pour them out? That's my big idea. I think the people I'm going to ask are going to have some better big ideas, and so I'm going to, so hopefully, I hope they're going to be a bit bigger than that. And so I'm going to ask each of my guests in turn to say what their big idea for a better, and I'm just going to say this, Sam, before I set you going, is that the world the world before we went into COVID was not normal. It had homeless people sleeping on the streets. A lot of our ex-servicemen just not cared for at all. It had food banks. It had 10 years of austerity. It had a linear economy which is wrecking the nature. It had wars in Syria. It had the Western nations consciously and purposely destabilizing politics in these countries to stop them being troublesome, and then complaining when all these immigrants started streaming out of the war zone. It was an awful world before COVID, and I don't want to go back to that normal at all. I want to go back and see what we can do to make the world a better place. So I asked my guests, what are your ideas? What's your big ideas for post-COVID world? And now I'm going to shut up. Sam.
Great. One thing from the comments, Julie's just said we need to pay people like 10p a bottle for recycling and or some kind of redemption for rubbish. At festivals, you always used to see at the end of festivals people with massive bags of rubbish, and that's because they were getting paid for them, you know. But my big idea is about community centres. I really think that we need to invest in and fund community centres, and the reason why is a lot of our public buildings have been sold off. I was having a conversation with a friend, and we were trying to reimagine what the education system should look like for a sustainable education in the future, because what we are being told is that there might be times when schools get shut down here or schools get shut down there, and you know, so we might not have normal schooling as usual for a couple of years even. I mean, who knows with this coronavirus. And one of the problems we have with we've moved further and further into having bigger and bigger and bigger schools over the years, haven't we? So from an infection point of view, bigger schools are not a good idea. Smaller schools are a better idea. And we were talking about internet connectivity and getting students to access even an internet connection in some places. I know in Teesdale, they don't have broadband. There's lots of other places that still aren't really connected for a whole household to be doing things like this all day. And she said, what I would do is she lives in School Aycliffe, I would use our community centre, and there's loads of space, and all of the children of a certain age, of secondary school age, could use the community centre. And that got me thinking about how having a functional community centre has become such a postcode lottery, because while councils are very good, there's a thing called a community asset transfer, where a council can lease a community centre or a public asset to a community group for a very low amount of money. You still need people who are able to volunteer and commit time to that, who have a certain level of education where they can manage that asset properly, and they can manage accounting stuff, and they can bookkeep and that. So it's not something that's available everywhere, a community centre, and a community centre is a springboard for toddler groups and other non-profit organisations to have a starting point. And looking at, like we have over the last 4 months, with all of the little organisations springing up to deliver food and aid to people who are isolated during the coronavirus, that would have been made so much easier if every community had a community centre within walking distance that could be used as a hub for operations. So I think we need to get back to the community centre, and the only way it's going to be viable is if it is supported actively by the government.
You're absolutely correct. I mean, I'm the chair of Newton Aycliffe Youth and Community Centre, and the government, actually, we've been able to tap into government grants for business. And so, but we were looking, and we're saying that we were okay to the end of the year, but if the problems ran on over the end of the year, then we were going to be in trouble. Now, we've just got a big booking, which is going to go ahead, so the financial panic, but sort of far from being built upon and enhanced and increased. In fact, community centres are in danger of going under, because an awful lot of their income depends on people visiting them, and they've just been closed down for huge. Something I saw on the television, on social media, was the failure of the BBC, and they were saying, why has the BBC not been broadcasting lessons day in, day out on BBC 4 or BBC 3? What, not BBC 2? Why? have they done really the pig's ear of it on iPlayer, where you can only get it if you've got broadband. And of course, you're absolutely right. Broadband is a big problem. So roll on the government. You're right about government grants as well, Sam. The councils have had to steadily over the last decade just slice grants to. At one point, we used to largely support them, and large amounts of money went out to each community centre. But we've had to slice that and slice it till eventually it's stopped. And they're all ending up having to support themselves. Brilliant idea. Community centres. So you'll be our community centre guru. That's thank you. Yes. I'm going to Laura. I'm going to come to you later. So sort of gender balance. Stuart, big idea.
Universal basic income to try and address some of the issues we've clearly got going on. Obviously, lots of people have been made redundant, lost work in the last quarter. I think it was 220,000 people less unemployed in the last quarter, which is like a devastating amount of people to lose work. And clearly that's going to continue. And if we could, piggyback off the furlough scheme, a universal basic income that would protect a lot of people, not leave people trying to move between one benefit system to come off it to go back on it. It would be such a massive protection for people.
I mean, is this affordable, Stuart? I mean, how would we afford a UBI?
It's my understanding that universal basic income would actually be cheaper to roll out and maintain than our current social security system. So you can already afford it.
Does everybody get this, whatever they earn?
Yes.
Also, is it only people who will be getting benefits? I mean, how does it work, UBI?
Well, it is universal. Everybody would get it, but there's lots of things that people get as benefits that aren't considered benefits, like some of the tax breaks people get, some of the things like the saving things and the lifetime ISAs, the extra £1,000 that the government's putting in when people are sticking £4,000 away in savings. That's it's still £1,000 that would have been going to them one way or another. It's just it's not got the requirement of £4,000 in the bank to get
it. Sam, was it you that was talking about putting up child benefit?
Yeah, so I've got a few friends who work in the benefits system, whether I've got the particular friend I'm thinking of used to be a welfare rights worker and now works for the Citizens Advice Bureau, advising people on benefits things. And one of her campaigns at the moment is that the quickest way to help the maximum amount of people in this country without having to create new databases and computer systems is just to put up child benefit. Now, obviously, not everybody has children, and whenever we talk about these things, there are two big arguments against it. What about me? I don't have kids, I'm being left out again. And also the argument that I don't want, because child benefit is anybody who earns less than £50,000 a year can have child benefit. So some people argue they don't need it. The fact is we've got a tax system and the child benefit gets worked into that. So you might, it changes your taxable income. So you might end up having more tax taken away, and it kind of evens itself out if you are very, very high earning. But obviously people who are parents have had a huge change in their circumstances over the last 4 months, having to have their children at home, having to home educate them, having to try and probably losing their jobs or having to cut down their hours. And what people forget is that looking after children is good for everybody, because the pension system is a great Ponzi scheme. You need somebody paying in the national insurance at the bottom so that people at the top can get their pensions out. And we are looking after the doctors and the engineers of the future, and they deserve some basic stuff that's been taken away from them by taking the education system away from them.
Stuart, would you get universal basic income and child allowance, or would child allowance be sort of?
I would imagine that there would be a child element where a child would receive some level of support. So,
I mean, it strikes me that sort of it would put a lot of money into. I mean, the big problem with those 200,000 people is that they're not spending anything. And so all these businesses then struggle, particularly service industries, struggle because nobody's spending with them. And so that unemployment then creates further economic distress down the line. So if we gave everybody universal basic income, that would be corrected then. The other thing, of course, is that it would ease the pressure on these people, because at the moment, the mental stress of how am I going to cope, that would be gone, and we'd be a lot happier society. Laura and Paul, have you got anything to say about those two ideas, UBI, or before I move on?
Mine's kind of linked to UBI a little bit. My big idea.
So okay,
so I'll come in then.
Difficult, Paul, is yours. We don't understand. We've all agreed, listener, that we don't understand what Paul's talking about. But sort of,
I haven't said it yet. Maybe you'll understand.
Now is the time to go and make a cup of tea. Paul, tell us about your big idea.
This is a brilliant big idea. Okay, it's not my big idea. This is an idea to do with modern monetary theory. So this is coming from some of the leading economists in the world. And I would like a government job guarantee scheme. Now, I'm going to give you some background to this. What we have seen is the government through the furlough scheme paying people not to work. Okay, so they can afford it. I think what people don't understand is it's going to take a lot of unlearning because of Thatcher's no such thing as society, that really, really childish, ridiculous view of economies where, oh, we've got to live within our means and we collect in taxes like Prince John in Robin Hood, and then we spend them on other things. That's not how economies work. It's not how economies work if you're a currency issuer like we are. So this is one of the times where we can say it's really, really good to be Britain because we've got our own currency, and that means as long as inflation doesn't get out of hand, we can spend money. We can do that.
Is this a benefit of Brexit then?
No. No, this is just to do with the fact that we have our own currency. So it's a benefit of not joining the euro. So Greece couldn't do this, and this is why Greece got into a lot of trouble when the eurozone were particularly cruel to Greece in paying back their debt. But with regards to what we can do is because we are a currency issuer, we can choose to create a certain amount of money, like Rishi Sunak's doing at the minute for the furlough scheme. He's giving people money so that the economy doesn't fall out. It's a shock absorber to the economy. Lots of people are losing money. We're losing a lot of productivity and people aren't earning money anymore. So the shock absorber is those people are given furlough payments, because if everyone lost all the money at the same time, then no one spends and then we crash. It's a disaster. So what he's done is a good thing. However, what it shows you is that we can always do this. We can always have this shock absorber in the system. So what we could do as a country, because the other thing is as well, the system that we work in suggests that full employment is a certain level of unemployment, which sounds really perverse, but it's true. So that it might be, say, 5%, the government might work on 5% unemployment is full employment. We don't know what full employment is. We don't know what the productive capacity of this country is. But we could if we had a guaranteed job scheme. And what you would have is you would have social jobs that look after people in your communities, that people could come in, it would be paid, it would be dignified, it would be a really, really a good way to work. And that would work as your minimum wage. So you might get something like 10, 12, 15 pounds an hour, something like that. Then all the other jobs that were maybe a different thing, maybe producing something, would have to use that as their baseline figure. But what you could do is lots of things, we look around the place, lots of things need doing. Think about what can be done in your community. Lots of things could be done, but this wouldn't replace the things that are being done. This would be instead of things that aren't being done. This would be social help. This would be maybe, I don't know, knocking on old people's doors to see if they're all right. It would be supporting your community. It would be doing something nice. And you could go into your community centre, as Samantha was talking about earlier on, and you could go into your community centre and pick up your guaranteed job and say, I quite fancy doing that. I'm going to go and do that and have a really dignified job. And that person would work, and then you would know what your working capacity was, and that could be an environmental job, it could be like planting trees, it could be anything that you wanted it to be, anything that your community needs, and you get paid for that. So rather than under the furlough scheme getting paid for not doing work, you get paid for doing work. And as long as not too much money floods into the system, inflation will not increase and we will not see hyperinflation. This isn't like just giving money so this would mean we'd run at a deficit, but a deficit's okay as long as that money's going into the hands of the people.
Paul,
instead of the hands of the... Yeah.
We're running out of time here. I've just got one quick question before I come to Laura. Can I apologise to Julie, who's should be by now in the waiting room?
Oh, she's waiting. She's there.
And I'm just going to finish this, and we're going to listen to Laura's big idea. Is this not very similar to workfare, Paul? How is it different to workfare? Where basically what you do is you say, we're going to make you work for your unemployment pay.
We're not going to make it will be voluntary, but
right.
It would be a good, high quality job that people could go and choose, something that the community decides that they need, and people could go in and say, well, actually, it's going to be a relatively high paid job, this, and that would be your basic level of income, a little bit like the UBI, I suppose, and administering it would be, like Stuart said, administering UBI is cheaper than a lot of entitlements, a lot of benefits.
So many questions. Stuart, would not UBI undermine Paul's idea of guaranteed job? Because basically you'd be saying to people, right, you've lost your job. Are you going to you can either sit at home and watch the telly on UBI, or you can go out and do a meaningful job for the minimum wage, picking weeds off the path. People, does it not undermine? People aren't going to go out and pick weeds off the path if they can watch the telly.
People wouldn't be picking weeds off the path, by the way. That's not what it is.
Very important job to do, I think. Stuart and I go and do it regularly.
Because that needs to be done. That needs to be done. Someone deserves to be paid for doing that job. But these would be an additional social job that wouldn't necessarily be the job of the council, for example. It would be something additional. We'd have to invent these jobs.
I was being unnecessarily facetious. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah, people like to go to work. People really miss going to work, as we've noticed over the last couple of months. So I think people would jump at that chance. They really would. I mean, people volunteer if that's any measure of how much people like to work.
I agree, to tell you the truth. Laura, we've kept you waiting for so long, and now I'm going to basically take your idea and say thank you and move on.
I'll be absolutely as quick as I possibly can then.
There's no need.
So, talking about a big idea post-COVID, it's such a huge conversation. It's really difficult for someone who is not a specialist in this area, because you obviously think of, I mean, for me, the Green New Deal whole idea is where it's at. Seeing the clean oceans and the cleaner air and all of that was just beautiful because humans aren't destroying it. So the electrification of cars, investing in tidal and solar and wind power and all of that is absolutely essential in my view, but well beyond my skill set. So I decided to think about something a bit more personal to me. And during this time, I've been working the whole time, but I've been working from home, which I might add is not easy when you've got two small children on you all the time, as Samantha said earlier on, literally on you all the time.
They're back to school in September.
Well, for how long? That is a different conversation. But yes, I'm equally terrified. I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, working from home, if companies could implement a remote working policy, the company I work for, I feel, needs to do that. because we've proven that we can work from home. It is possible. The amount of petrol money I've saved from not going back and forward to the office on a pointless journey, but also not just that, the amount of pollution as a person I have saved emitting into the atmosphere because I haven't had to use my car to get to work is huge. And if more people did that, then we'd see more benefit to the environment, which can only be a good thing. Also, it helps with the childcare issue. If we can't at the minute let the grandparents of our children look after our children because of the fear of COVID, because many are self-isolating still and because many are vulnerable, then that kind of sort of solves that issue. It is difficult to work while you've got kids around you, but at least you're not putting someone's lives at risk. And yes, as I said, they're going to go back to school, but I do wonder how long that's going to last for. And as Samantha mentioned, you know, communist broadband is going to be an essential. That thing that we were demonized for putting in our manifesto now seems to be quite essential if we're going to do things like this. And now the Tories are on board, so you know they may come up behind us and it may take them a bit of time to get on board, but they do get there eventually when it serves their purpose. So
don't get me started on broadband, because I sort of Newton Aycliffe is losing out on sort of fibre broadband. It's not in the first wave for the county. And that's all because they've just put it in the hands of a private corporation, because it's not a government enterprise.
Isn't that always the way? Private
just
companies
very
will out.
briefly, are you not, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. One of the things that COVID has proved is that firms can cope not only with workers working from home, but workers working much more flexibly as well. And so the system has coped with this, and so why not? But do you not think that I really miss going to work, going out?
I do. Yes, I do, and I miss my work colleagues. It's not good for your mental health, and I can attest to that. My work colleagues are all absolutely fantastic. They are my family, and I miss them so much. But there's nothing to say that you couldn't go into work 1 or 2 days a week and 3 days be working from home. If everybody did that, it would make a huge impact, not only environmentally but economically, and also just to help in the home. You know, me and Samantha have had this conversation a lot of times about how COVID has seriously affected women, and it's affected men as well, of course it has, and I'm not trying to take anything away from men, but women do get the carers' responsibilities predominantly, and it does disproportionately affect women. So if they can be at home as well and take away that guilt of having to go to work and have it all and all of that we do get demonized for. You can't do right for doing wrong for being a woman. You can either have a career or have a family. This is a whole show, John. and I will talk about it for hours.
Yes, and I'm going to shut you up.
And I know we don't have that time.
Not because it isn't a major issue that is absolutely valid and much more important to people's lives, quite frankly, than should we drop bombs on Syria. No, it's important, but in fact, it's much more relevant to the fact that sort of here I am with my children, trying to cope, doing a job and the cleaning of the house, which my husband has just still managed to leave to me. These things are vital for people.
If we can ease issues locally and in the home, then we can start focusing on the really big issues internationally and become internationalists.
Okay, no jingle at this point, people. So welcome to Wallace Rogers. And we now welcome Julie Sturck to our Hiya, Julie.
Hi, Julie.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey. Welcome. Just briefly, explain the rules to our listener guests. I'm going to ask you to ask your question in a little while, and I'm going to quiz you about your question. But here's the thing. We yield to each other. So if you see somebody's fingers, particularly mine, appear above the bottom of the picture, then you yield to that person. But equally, if somebody's talking, you want to shut them up and say something, you can do the same thing. You just bring your hand up so it shows in the picture. Oh, right, you were just practicing.
Right.
Okay, Julie, what's your question for us? Oh?
All right. My question is, how are we as the Labour Party and the movement going to go past the racism that we've seen recently, particularly, I'm thinking in particular with Diane Abbott's tweet of this week. And I've got an echo. Excellent.
It's because the show goes out on a delay, but you're on this call now.
So to turn off anything or turn the sound down on anything which isn't just this direct one. So if you've got it playing on another on another instrument, on another pad or iPad or something like that, turn that off.
But so this is about Diane Abbott's tweet where she
Paul, what was the tweet?
She basically called into question those people who were racist during the allegedly racist in the leaked report. So we've seen a lot of action from Keir Starmer against certain people, and Diane Abbott seems to perceive that, you know, if those people have said those things and they're saying actually us being a bit racist there was actually taken out of context, and there was a context in which if you'd have understood the context it was okay. So she said publish everything and then we'll see what the context is, which
Lauren,
seems perfectly reasonable to me.
Do you think that there's race? I mean, the Labour Party is continually getting accused of being anti-Semitic. We discussed that a couple of weeks ago. But do you think that there's racism inside the Labour Party towards the black members or the BAME members?
I mean, obviously I'm a Labour Party member and I abhor any sort of racism at all, and I would hope to hold everybody else to that standard as well. But I think potentially in this instance and in many instances we've seen recently with Dawn Butler being pulled over by the police, she says because she's black and there's institutional racism, and that being bad enough, I think that probably potentially the worst thing to happen after that was that Boris Johnson was the first person to comment on it before Keir Starmer publicly commented on it, and so that adds to the whole commentary on whether the Labour Party are strong enough. I do believe, and I would not be part of a party that wasn't anti-racist or that ignored those issues. So I do believe we are anti-racist, and I do believe people want the best. But also, yes, I do think Diane is right in the fact that things are being twisted and things are being said out of context. If they publish the full report, then people can see for themselves. I do think we've had, and this is my own opinion, I do think we've had a lot of people undermining our party to try and get us not to get into power in 2017, and that succeeded. Obviously that's all alleged at the moment until we see what happens, and obviously people have to be careful what they say, but at the end of the day things have been said that are hurtful, things have been proven to have been said that are hurtful. The thing about Diane Abbott, and there are so many things, she has proven to be the most vilified and the most attacked member of parliament simply because of the colour of her skin, and that has been proven, and we've seen that is absolutely disgusting. And there was a part, and me and Paul did painstakingly read through the report, which was very lengthy, and I want them to release the full thing so we can read through that as well. But there was a part where I think Diane Abbott was particularly upset with some abuse she'd received on Twitter, and people had laughed at her for that and called in the media to come and see her publicly.
Well, she'd been crying. She'd gone away. She'd been reduced to tears.
I think it was a death threat by email, I think.
Which I think anybody would be shaken by. And to do that and to allow the press in to sort of make light of that and make entertainment of that and say, look at how weak she is, was particularly upsetting for many people. And you know, recently, as I say, with Dawn Butler and her black friend being pulled over in a car, we've seen that this week. You know, she videoed 8 minutes of it, and what I can say is the police were quite polite, but the reason for them pulling over these people was clearly because they were black. And if we're talking about within the Labour Party, Keir Starmer did apparently reach out to Dawn Butler privately and ask her if she was okay and ask her if she needed any support. And she wasn't asking for support at that time. For me, however, I think the leadership of our party needs to come out strongly against systemic racism and racism within power structures like that. Because if we don't stand for that, what is the point in us? We have to stand for equality.
Okay, Julie, have you lost your echo now?
No, it's still there.
All right, so basically, it wasn't just Diane Abbott that got it off the people who had the people at the offices at the head of the party.
Yeah.
The sort of Dawn Butler came into
yes,
that.
I know, I've seen that, yeah.
Cattiness, and also Clive Lewis. I mean, was that what you were talking about, or are you talking about any other systemic?
It was, in particular, it was the tweet that she actually sent out, where it says that officials at the top of Labour said stuff like, Abbott is truly repulsive. Abbott literally makes me sick and conspired with the media against me. Now claiming remarks taken out of context. Well, I'm struggling to see how those remarks could be taken out of context. But that's
I agree.
Just me. You know.
Yeah, and as white people, it's not our job to turn around and say, oh, those remarks were taken out of context. That's not what I meant. It's our job to say, I am listening to you as somebody who has experienced racism, and I am going to learn, and I'm going to correct my behaviour, and I'm going to apologise unreservedly. It doesn't matter if you didn't mean to say what you said. One of the things that gets repeated often over and over again in these circumstances is impact is more important than intent. Yeah. I might not intend to be racist. Most people don't intend to be racist. It's just ingrained things that we learned, opinions that we've got about people, and we need to recognise that what we do that creates an impact on the world, which makes Black and Asian and people of all different types of marginalisations feel that it's harder to live their life. It's our responsibility to do something about it, to make the world an easier place for them to live in. So that's my response to that whole concept. I mean, lots of people don't realise that a lot of these things are racist dog whistles, saying that somebody makes you feel ill, calling them disgusting. You know, somebody who is Black or Asian is more likely to get that kind of attack than somebody who's white, and it's all to do with inbuilt prejudices. So, as Laura said, I am a passionate anti-racist. I am passionately pro-equality, and I wouldn't be in the Labour Party if I didn't believe that that's what we stand for. However, yeah. John?
Thank you, Julie. We've run out of time on your question.
Oh, that's all right.
So much for asking it.
It's lovely to see you.
Spot on. And if you have any other questions ever, please come on and ask those as well.
No, it sprung to my mind because I'd read the tweet and I thought, how sad is that for a human being, not only a human being, but a sitting MP, to find it necessary to call it out in public. Why are we not supporting her? or it feels as though we are not supporting her at the minute.
I would say as well that people haven't apologised. They've just said, "Oh, it's been taken out of context." They didn't say, "God, I feel terrible." That's not what we meant. But I don't know what they could have meant.
Well, I mean, how did they not intend to say it? I mean,
how else that could have been meant, you know, those particular words, if they've been said allegedly and all the rest of it.
There's no legend about it. They actually said it. It's there in black and white. And sort of, and when you're saying something as horrible as that, how can it be taken out of context? You know, no, it's outrageous. Anyway, God bless you, Julie. Thank you so very much. And a fleeting visit.
Bye.
Thank you. Right, everybody, we have got now 2 questions and 6 minutes to do them in.
I think we extend for a couple.
Paul,
let's go to 10 past, John.
Sort of, Paul, talk to us about the Tory contract scandal. Just tell us about it.
Okay, so very quickly, we would think we've all heard about this contract when they've been given out the pandemic contracts for PPE. The government couldn't get PPE in quick enough, and they put out an appeal. And I think most of us remember at the time that there were companies saying, "Well, we were offering to do it. We're an expert in doing it," and no one tried to do it. No one tried to come to us. Turns out they were going to people like Liz Truss's friend Andrew Mills, who worked in Liz Truss's department and set up some companies that didn't actually exist until that time, and then thought, well, you know, we'll get 20% profit on this procurement, this £150 million procurement, or it might have been 250. I can't remember. There were lots of different terrible ones. There was like a pest control company that were given these massive contracts, and they've actually failed to deliver the correct level of PPE. Anyway, they had those face masks with the loops around the ears, and the NHS need the ones that are tied around the back. So basically, the government have been given contracts to people who had no experience of doing it, who set up a company that had £100 worth of assets and said, "We'll go and procure you all this PPE equipment." And they've went away and they've done it really, really badly and still being paid. And they are friends or people who worked for people in government, which is the worst type of cronyism, and the fact that they were playing with people's lives as well. I think this is awful. Profiteering over this kind of thing. It's the worst.
Worse than putting your brother in as a lord. Stuart, I mean...
Yes, yes, I would say that is worse.
Well, because it's connected to money. Stuart, I mean, what amazes me is that there's been so little outcry about this. Does anybody care about the fact that the government's been giving millions of pounds worth of money to its friends?
I think people would care if they really knew about it. I think with people being so busy trying to get their lives back together with the COVID situation, and lots of people not really knowing how businesses are set up or how they're managed, they seem really abstract, and I don't think people are getting, you know, their minds around that.
I think there's a big thing, isn't there? That there's a whole load of stuff that we just don't understand. So maybe we do just.
And also what we've talked about before, which is that people expect the government to do things that are bad. People don't trust the government. They don't expect any better from them.
Well, I'm speechless. Yes. Laura, last word on the contract scandal.
Yeah, I mean, I can only echo what everyone else says, particularly what Samantha said about people not expecting any better. But it's not really just that. It's that we know a lot of people who say, "Oh, I'm not into politics," because it is, and it's designed to be out of reach of the normal people. You know, it is the way the systems are set up are sort of outdated, and they're not welcoming, and they're not inclusive, and they are complicated. Why would anybody want to get involved in that? So when they hear these things, oh, the government have done this, and it's all this, and people just go, oh, how does that affect me personally? I don't care. And you can see why they don't, because they're too busy trying to stay alive, trying to keep their jobs, trying to feed their family. That is the thing.
See, I don't get that, Laura. What I hear is people saying, this is just Labour moaning again. We get the blame
we say that to you, John.
about the scandals. They don't blame the government for the scandals, they blame Labour for pointing them out.
What I find is, because I speak to a lot of my friends, not as a Labour Party member, just as, what do you think is happening in the world? What do you think of this, that and the other? Somehow Boris Johnson, and we've talked about this before actually, I've seen you talk about it, how they've managed to get themselves as the voice of the people, and as the most establishment people ever, like literally people who've got eaten and have been trained to be in charge and nothing else. And people are just accepting it. But we've been fed that, because it's all about, and it goes back years. We've all heard it, you know. We might be in this together, but you have to look out for yourself. And everybody's been trained to look after themselves. And we're in a position now where people are so terrified and so scared that they're losing their jobs, they're losing their money, families getting ill. That's what they're focusing on. They don't care if some rich person has done this, that and the other. What they don't. And I don't want to minimize that and be patronizing to say we need education. People don't have time to listen to this argument. People don't have time to learn that, you know, there's an argument, and yes, it might be a huge accusation that the reason that what's his face, Dominic Cummings came up to Barnard Castle was because his wife happened to be related or in business with someone in Barnard Castle who dealt with the track and trace app that they were going to then buy. That is alleged, but they've kept that right under the wire, and it is outrageous. But yet to me, I go, yeah, that would make sense. And that's really sad that would make sense to me, that our government is now in a position to only give out these jobs and these contracts to people they know that their friends will benefit from. For me, if people just read The Ragged Trouser Philanthropist, which is not an easy read, it's, you know, it's a hefty book, nothing's changed.
Right, two things. First of all, don't read The Ragged Trouser. It's the most boring book I've ever. I got about page 15. So just a little word of advice, people. Secondly, last question. Thank you, Laura. God bless you. Ferry Hill Station petition. Stuart, tell us about that, and tell us whether are we supposed to be pleased about it, or
it's a bit of a nothing, the petition itself, because the petition is to ask DCC to prioritise the reopening of Ferry Hill Station and the Laneside railway line, which is something that DCC already does in its planning and its policies, and it's, you know, it's been pretty vocal about it over the years, and it's basically been kicked into the long grass basically because it needs central government funding, and it's come down to the point where a petition was started. Paul Howell, the MP, who is back in the train station, supported the petition to get a policy put forward at DCC, which is a council that he sits on, and would have known about the council's policy to get this railway in the first place. So he's basically supported his own council doing the job that they were already doing.
Good for him. And getting credit for it as well. I mean, Paul, is this just an example of sour grapes from the Labour Party because the independents have picked it up and are running with a good, something that everybody's very pleased with?
Yeah, it's absolutely that, definitely, because I remember on the 31st of July, just gone, I remember I shared a 2-year-old Facebook post which said the Labour Party in Sedgefield have backed the County Durham plan, the reopening of the Laneside line, and the reopening of Ferry Hill Station. And
hang on.
the first...
Smug look.
You explained it very well. There were other issues at that meeting, if I remember correctly. I remember there was a thunderstorm, and there was someone who loudly went around the room shaking everyone's hand, going during there was a certain level of rudeness at that meeting, I remember. But that person will go unnamed, a bit of a Voldemort character. But anyway, so sorry about that. Anyway,
I want to name him.
So we decided that we backed that plan, and I'd shared that on the 31st of July and on the 1st of August, which is the next day, if anyone doesn't understand calendars. The Ferry Hill Town Council decided that they should now start this petition about reopening the Leamside line, and I am, there are people on there who were friends of mine. There were other people who shared that thing. They saw me sharing it on Facebook and shared it in Ferry Hill groups. And then all of a sudden we were like, well, why don't we have a petition to try and do what Durham County Council want to do, but like pretend that it wasn't what Durham County Council wanted to do. So we'll ask them to do the thing that they wanted to do and pretend it's our idea. So I think what we should try and do is maybe like have petitions to, like, maybe we should invent something, like maybe like have a nice, really lovely cathedral in the middle of Durham, have a petition about that. Get a really lovely tourist attraction for the middle of Durham. We need it. God, we need it. We'll have a petition about that, and when we'll claim that one.
I can remember, Paul, going to Ferry Hill Town Centre with you in the pouring rain.
It was horrible. I love Ferry Hill.
For better rail links to Ferry Hill. And I can remember we had a big, long discussion about whether we were going to campaign in Newton Aycliffe about better train facilities or Ferry Hill, and we chose Ferry Hill. And we stood there in the pouring rain wanting better rail facilities for Ferry Hill. But Sam, is it just not the fact that this is a good idea and Labour ought to they've stolen the march on us and stolen our thunder, we need to be supporting it. And when you look at what the train station's done for Hordern, would it just not be as good for Ferry Hill?
Yeah, I mean, train stations are good news. I'm lucky to live in Shildon. We've got a train station, and I'm very, very pleased that I can use public transport to get to Newcastle.
We've got two Newton Aycliffe, ha ha ha.
Doesn't do. So yes.
That threw you off your stride, didn't it?
What we need is we need these new opposition politicians that have come into the political sphere in the Northeast over the last few months. We really need them to appreciate that we need to work together to create good things. And if they're going to go around all the time slagging us off and making shit out, every bad thing in the world is down to Durham County Council and the Labour Durham County Council this and the Labour Durham County Council that, we're not developing a goodwill that we need to deliver for the people. So I think a bit of humility here would go a long way for Paul Howell to build links in the community and say, oh, okay, it's not all me. It's very obviously everybody's got their own. Everybody believes they know how the world needs to be run, and the Conservative Party and the Labour Party have got very different values. They believe they've got to kind of bang the drum for their cause. But when it comes to issues like this, we need a bit of humility. We do need cross-party working. I would love to think that I can just go to a litter pick that's been organised by DNF, for example. I don't see any harm in that, but I wouldn't be invited. So
I couldn't agree more. There's so many of the issues nowadays are not party issues, particularly at local, they're cross-party issues, and it's very difficult cooperating with people who are just scoring points. But one of the things we have to understand as a Labour Party is that that's what everybody accuses us of. Yeah. We have to lose this. We have to learn to work together.
I do think it's just funny, though. It is just funny that they did this. Like, you know, it's very silly.
It's what they do. And to tell you the truth, I've been in
just funny.
politics since 1995, and they've been doing it since 1995. I don't think you're going to change it. Right, I'm going to bring this thing to an end. People, you have been spectacular. Laura and Sam, I can't praise you more. In your bad mood, he didn't come across at all. You were just powerful.
Yep. Thank you.
This is a Stuart, you're just so wise. God bless you, and happy birthday for last week. And Paul, as always, the boss. Thank you. God bless you. What's going to happen now is that Paul's going to play us out with No Pasaran. We're going to come back and for 20 minutes in the chill out zone. Do sign up. Sam, we're relying on you to have that list of questions and comments that we can make comments on, because I can't bring them up on my computer. And so this is the end of the formal show. God bless you all. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, shall we all say bye?
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Don't go. Bye-bye.
Stay. Listen to the music.
My name is Jack Atkinson, I'm not afraid, and I live and die by this vow that I made. The only good fascist, a dead one, they said, and I'm the real we have. When I first left for all them months ago, told him I'd come not to kill but to cure. For an ambulance driver, my shot's pretty sure. And around Maria, we are. Let's sing it! No pass around, no pass around, no pass around together. The fascists have come for our freedom. We ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here. I told my mother now, mother, be strong. For the left way is right and the right way is wrong. And you can stick that on my grave when I'm gone. For around Maria, we are. Come on! No pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. The flashes have come from our freedom. We ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here today. Cast may be cast, and the cast may be cast. You armies of darkness, you press to your west. 'Cause to win, yeah, well, you gotta get past those fast. And around Maria, we are. No pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. The fascists have come for our freedom. We ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here. No pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. Come on! No pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. One more! No pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. Fascists have come a red flag flying here.